Hey guys, today I'm going to be planting my tomatoes that are beside me here. These are only some of them. I actually have a lot more than this to plant. But these are a few, and these are actually my indeterminate varieties of tomatoes. And if you're not sure what that is, indeterminate variety just means that it kind of grows until it basically doesn't stop growing until it gets cold and it freezes. And a determinate variety is where it kind of grows shorter and bushier. It doesn't vine out as long as the indeterminate varieties. So I've decided to grow mostly indeterminate varieties this year, and I'm actually going to be growing them along my pergola. I usually just get a tomato cage and put them in there, but by the end of the season they're kind of just vining all over the place and falling on the ground, and I'm having to like use bamboo stakes or whatever other stakes I have around to kind of tie them up. But it's always kind of a hassle, and it just doesn't seem like the best way. And when I was working out at a farm recently, last summer actually, they vined their tomatoes up a string, and I'd kind of seen this done before, but I had just never thought about doing it. I'm not really sure why. Probably because I didn't have a big enough structure to do so. But so this year I am going to be vining them up my pergola that I just had built last summer, and I'm going to be vining them up a string, and hopefully they will get as tall as the pergola. I think the pergola is like 12 feet tall or something, maybe even taller than that. It's pretty tall. So these are going to have so much room to vine. As you can see, I mean, they are already so big. Some of these guys are so tall, and they really need to be staked soon. They're doing really good. Their stems are nice and strong. I didn't actually stake these yet because I am going to be growing them up a string, and I was just kind of curious to see how well they would hold up, and they're holding up really well. But so what I'm going to be doing is, and I'll show you this as I do it. I'll make another video on it. But I'm just gonna be literally vining this up a string and then clipping it as it grows. And so, you know, this should allow it to grow as big as it wants to. And I'm hoping to get a lot more fruit and then prevent a lot of diseases, because what happens with tomatoes when they're all falling and they're falling all over the ground, and their leaves are kind of like staying moist, that can introduce a lot of diseases and different funguses. Tomatoes are just known to get diseases. There's so many out there that they can get, from blossom drop to blight to, I mean, there's just, I don't even know all of them, but they all basically end up killing the plant or making it look really sad and not allowing it to produce a lot of fruit. And some of the fruit actually gets diseases as well. So to avoid that, we want to create as much airflow around the tomato plants as possible. So as you can see, I mean, these are like right up on top of each other. So you would never want to plant tomatoes this close to each other. You want to space them about 18 feet apart. 18 feet? No, not 18 feet. You want to space them about 18 inches apart, maybe about a foot apart if you're pruning them heavily. But otherwise, give them as much room as they can. And this will really help cut back on some of those problems that tomatoes have. So another thing you want to think about is where you're going to place the tomatoes. So when thinking about your backyard, or if you have just like a patio and you're growing it in a very large pot, definitely need to be a really large pot. But wherever you're growing it, you need to make sure that it has adequate sunlight. So when thinking about you know, where you're going to put them, maybe kind of look at where the sun is during the day, and you know, if you think, oh, okay, I want to place them over here, well, just make sure that throughout the day they're getting about 6 to 8 hours of sunlight, that spot is getting about 6 to 8 hours. Now tomatoes are going to do better at about 8 hours of sunlight, if not even more than that. So you really want to give them as much sun as they can, because they're going to take all of the sun's energy through their leaves and produce the fruit. So you want as much sunlight as possible so you can have more fruit. Now, if you place it in the shade, it's not to say that it's not going to produce fruit, it's just not going to produce as much fruit. So think about that when you're thinking about where you're going to plant them. And so also what you're going to want to think about is what you're gonna do with the tomatoes. Are you gonna bind them up? Are you gonna put them in a cage? Are you gonna think of some other crazy way to do it? I've seen people binding them through cattle panel. I mean, there's all kinds of ways to trellis your tomatoes, and especially the indeterminate varieties. Like I said, they just keep growing and growing and growing, and so you can grow them almost as far as you want to. All right, something else to kind of, hi kitty, what you doing? Oh, someone came to say hi. So, and this is Luna, by the way, if you all don't know her and you're new to my channel, that is Luna behind me, and she is a little diva. Anyway, so another thing that you want to think about when thinking about where you're going to place your tomatoes is if the area gets proper drainage. Now, these are not going to like super sopping wet soil. They definitely need proper drainage. Once again, you're just going to introduce diseases if you let these things sit in water, and they're just gonna die, and you don't want that, because if you've started your babies from seed, you've nurtured them to this point, and so just proper drainage. Make sure that, you know, when it rains, that you're kind of checking your yard and seeing where maybe it's puddling up, and then just don't plant there. Plant somewhere else. Plant in a drier area. Another thing I want to talk to you guys about is blossom drop. You can see these little cute little blossom on here. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. That's gonna be fruit soon. But anyways, so blossom drop. So you've nurtured your babies, they're growing, they're starting to get their little flowers, and it's so exciting. And then the weather gets super hot all of a sudden, say like above probably like 95 degrees or something, gets really hot, stays really hot, and these guys are going to suffer. Like as soon as the weather drops back down to lower temperatures, they'll be fine. They'll start producing more blossoms, and it'll all be a-okay. But during those periods of super, super, super hot weather, maybe it's even above 95, it might be like 100 or something. I don't remember the exact degree that it is that the blossom drops start, but all I know is that it happens because it's happened to me, and all my little blossoms started dropping, and I was so sad, thinking like, oh, my tomatoes are ruined, but they just produced more blossoms. So, you know, no need to fear when it comes to that. But if that starts to happen, you can place a shade cloth over them. So if you know it's going to be really, really hot, maybe you know, set up a little shade cloth to kind of cover them or shade them a little bit just throughout those hotter temperatures, because we don't want to lose our blossoms. So we want to try everything we can to keep them. But sometimes it's completely unavoidable, and it just is what it is. We can't really predict nature, can we? So one more thing before we get started, make sure that you do not plant your tomatoes in the heat of the day when the sun is super intense and it's super hot. We've been babying these guys for a while, so the best ideal time is going to be in the evening time. And so it is evening now, so the sun is not near as intense as it was earlier, and it's about like 75, 80 degrees today, something around there. So it's pretty warm, but these guys have adjusted quite nicely, but they are ready to go back. They are ready to go in the ground. Every day I come out here and water them, and they dry out really, really quick. So that means that their roots are probably, coming out the bottom here. So you can see the roots are coming out the bottom, which means they need to be planted. And that's another thing. Do not water these from the top. It's much better to water them from the bottom. So having an irrigation system is a great way to make sure that these are watered from the bottom and that their leaves aren't staying wet. Now, if you have proper airflow, it might not be that big of a deal, but you just really want to prevent, like I said, those diseases as much as possible. So watering from the bottom is always what you want to do. So maybe if you don't have a drip irrigation system, maybe get one or think about getting one. I plan on doing that this year, but until I get that done, I'm just going to water from the bottom and not spray all the leaves. You might think that the leaves want to be wet. They don't, trust me. So not only does it need to have proper drainage, but you also need to amend the soil. Definitely need to add some things like compost or worm castings. Tomatoes are a heavy feeder. So if you want those beautiful ripe tomatoes and you want them to produce a lot, then you're gonna wanna make sure and give these guys plenty of food, and you wanna start them off right by adding soil amendments to your soil. So I've already done that, and I've let my soil sit for about 3 weeks, 3 or 4 weeks, just to kind of get it ready, make sure that it's not like super overwhelming to the tomatoes or anything. So I added all of my stuff, and now I'm gonna plant, and I'll also add some compost as I go as well, just kind of in the hole. So I'll dig a hole about twice this size, and within that hole I'll make sure and add some more worm castings and some more you know, compost to it, just a little bit. All right, so I am going to start planting these down. I'm so excited. I have several to plant. I'm not going to show you the whole process, but I'm going to show you maybe 1 or 2, just so you kind of get an idea of the best way to plant these guys. So let's get started. Oh, I'm so excited about this. I cannot wait to have some amazing tomatoes. I'm growing a lot of weird varieties this year, so it's even more exciting. So I got my tomatoes, I got my shovel, and I also have some really good dirt behind me here. And I'm gonna fill some of the hole with this. So if you can see that, it's nice and just looks so good. So this is some compost I'm just gonna be adding to it. So I'm starting with my blue chocolate here, and make sure that you are labeling as you do this, so you know what you planted. So I'm digging this hole about twice the size as the pot, and as you can see, some of this soil that kind of came out of here is just clay. So that's why I'm gonna add compost to it. And we can put him down in there. That might be a little too far. But we'll fill that with some compost. And then we'll put in a little of this crappy soil. Kind of mix it in. All right, now we'll stick him down in there. And I'm just gonna kind of fill in with some of this soil and then some of the other stuff, some new stuff. And the cool thing about tomatoes is, if you've seen my videos before, then you know that you can plant them kind of deep, because these are just gonna grow roots out of their stems. But you will wanna trim these bottom leaves, especially if they start to yellow or look weird. But you can just go ahead and take them off. All right, and that's really it. Just want to compact them in there. Nice and good. And then I'll put some of this little straw I have around here so he can stay nice and moist at the base. And give him a little label so I know what he is. And so it's really that easy. Now I'm just gonna water him in really good, and that is that. So when you're watering, you wanna water at the base, and you wanna try to avoid getting the leaves wet. I think I mentioned that before, but I just wanna reiterate that. And we wanna give them a nice soaking. The next one I am planting is Brad's Atomic Grape. I am so excited for this guy. I've heard some mixed reviews, that people said that I'm adding this compost again. I've heard some mixed reviews on the Brad Atomic Grape. Some people say that it's not very good. Other people say it's delicious. But one thing is for certain, it's absolutely gorgeous, which is why I'm growing it. So I'm not too worried about the flavor. I mean, obviously I hope that it tastes good. I'm adding a little bit more compost here. Obviously I hope that it tastes good, but you know, I'm not gonna be mad if it doesn't, as long as it's beautiful. And I run an Airbnb out of my home, so I really want some different varieties growing around so people can kind of see and check it out. Maybe it inspires somebody else to grow. Oh, there's plastic. Inspires somebody else to grow some kind of different stuff. All right, there we go. I'm gonna put a little bit of this straw. I have some grass clippings in here too, just so that the base of this stays, just so the base of this stays moist. I don't want them right up on the stem. So whenever you plant these, make sure that you're giving them adequate support right away. I just have this little bamboo stake for now, but tomorrow I'll be making my cool little trellis. But yeah, so whether you're using a tomato cage, whether you're staking, whatever you're doing, just make sure that right off the bat they have some support. You'll kind of notice that some of them might already start to try to fall down, so we need to get those staked up so that their leaves are not on the soil and they're not getting diseased. Oh, and one other thing that I did forget to mention is that you only want to plant tomatoes in the same spot like every 3 years. So each year you want to plant in a new spot. So this year I'll plant them here, next year I'll plant them somewhere else. This just cuts down a lot on pests and diseases. That's why you want to have kind of this crop rotation going on with your tomato plants. But I don't always get that luxury. I have a very small backyard, so sometimes they're only getting a year in between where they're planted. And they still do pretty well. But for a rule of thumb, it's usually 3 years. And there you go. That is not too complicated at all, and you will be having tomatoes, wonderful, delicious homegrown tomatoes in no time, and so will I. I'm so excited. Thank you all so much for tuning in today and watching my channel. And if you're not on my YouTube channel, maybe go check it out if you're watching this on IGTV. Thank you all so much for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe to my YouTube channel, Yogi Gardens. Thanks, guys.